Hi, I'm Tammy Roth from Nashville, Tennessee, and I am a Family Constellations facilitator. I'm going to be creating a series of videos to explain as much as I can about family constellations, also known as systemic constellations or relational constellations. And these videos will be explaining as much as I can about how this process works and also giving you some guided meditations so you can just dip a toe in a little bit and experience what it's like to be working in what we call the knowing field. So to start with, in this first video, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about why I was so attracted to the process. I'm trained as a licensed psychotherapist and have spent the past 20 years in that role. And in my training, I was trained to assess and diagnose and then come up with a treatment plan and how to provide interventions. And right off the bat, as a student of this profession, I was like, it just felt like there was a lot more to the scenario than I was being taught. And so I started right away incorporating mind, body, spirit practices because I knew we were so much more than just our thoughts and beliefs about our lives and more than our behaviors. And so I've always brought in the body and have believed in the cellular memory in the body and how the body is a storehouse for the past experiences, for trauma. And I also believe we are all spiritual beings, even if we're not really connected to a spiritual practice. We are still spiritual beings housed in this body. And through the years as a therapist, I started realizing that it went even deeper than necessarily the body. And then epigenetics, research on epigenetics came through, and how that we do carry, we are predestined to play out the stories of our ancestors unless we change the conditions and the environment that we're currently in. And that was very interesting to me. So I started bringing that in, especially as I was working with addiction and recovery. And then all simultaneously with all of this work and learning, I was deepening my own spiritual practice. And a few years ago, I went to a family constellation day, and quite honestly, I didn't know what it was at all. I was just intrigued by the name. I didn't do any research. I just showed up. And what happened, the minute I walked in the room, I felt such a deep presence, a reverence, a sense of really sacred healing that had already started in the room, and we hadn't even started the day. And I was just really taken by that because there are so few places that we can go in the world and step in and feel that kind of reverence and sacred energy. So right off the bat, I was like, okay, something different is happening here. Then, as a participant in that constellation, the day was just absolutely mind-boggling to me, the depth of healing that happened and how all of us participants were able to step into this energetic field and have access to a knowing that it was just really astonishing to me, and how quickly I could feel that the ancestors were really there and supporting us. The ancestors wanted us doing this work. And I became immediately, I was just like, I don't know what this is, but I've got to know more. And so I kept going to group practices like that and just felt so at home. It just really resonated with my soul. And what I learned through that was that most any therapeutic practice I'd been involved in was very much at the personality and ego level. It was very much about the story that, as a client, I had been telling myself, the story I was repeating to myself. And so the constellation work goes beneath the ego, beneath the personality, beneath the story. And so we go down to the soul level. And a lot of times what's happening at the soul level looks very differently than the stories we're telling ourselves. So this felt like, as I had brought in the body to the emotional healing process in my early years as a therapist, this felt very similar to that. Like, we're not just putting a band-aid, we're getting to the root cause. And going into the soul level and into the ancestral lineage was going far deeper than I'd ever been able to go just going into the body. So now we're not just going into the body, but we're going into the body of the family system, into the lineage, going back as far as 7 generations. And this was just so profound to me, especially in working with these chronic patterns, because I would see people over and over who had worked so hard, done so much work, and yet these same patterns just kept showing up in their lives. So that was my initial attraction to the work. And I also, at the same time, then I became involved in becoming a facilitator. So I started attending the trainings to become a facilitator. And at the same time, I was enrolled in a more traditional experiential type therapy training. And what I found was that I could not do both at the same time, because the constellation work was such deep, sacred work that when I would show up to the other kind of training, it no longer resonated with me at all, because I knew I was called to do this deepest, sacred, just indescribable work. And that I so appreciated the depth, the slowness, and the patience that it took for someone's family history to unfold in front of our eyes, and for the tension to go out of the family system and a sense of peace to come into it. And I will talk about those concepts in future videos, but in this first one, I just wanted to really stress the depth, the sacredness, the soul level, the slowness. Even though I say slowness, even though I would also say that I have seen over and over people have just really quantum leaps in their healing process when we do this work as compared to when we were doing traditional therapy. So on one hand, it's much faster, but on another hand, it's when we're in the process itself, it's a much slower, very, very present process. So that is my introduction to family constellations, and I'll be talking about more aspects in future videos. So thank you so much for listening to this, and you can go to my website, which is tammyroth.com, TAMMYROTH.com, and I have a Family Constellations tab there, and you can learn more. You can book an individual session. You can watch for when I'm offering group healings as well. Thank you so much for listening.